finally tonight, it's no fantasy. A cartoonist and his characters take a trip to the museum. Jeffrey Brown went along, and he has our report.
Are you surprised to see comics, your comics, any comics, on the walls of a museum?
Well, yeah, of course. I mean, I grew up when you had to hide your comics inside your math book, you know?
Cartoonist Jeff Smith, now 48, is no longer hiding anything. An exhibition featuring original drawings from his hugely successful Bone comics is now on display at the Wexner Center for the Arts at The Ohio State University in Columbus. Bone is an epic fantasy featuring three comically goofy cousins, Phone, Phony, and Smiley, who get lost in a strange world, complete with dragons, scary rat creatures, and a mysterious young woman named Thorn with a hidden past as a princess. The series has attracted an adult audience, some 400 people here for a book signing, and that's who Smith says he originally had in mind. But in recent years, he's also gained a substantial following among young readers. Sometimes the appeal is all in the family.
Of whom he is in love. And us on an emergency call.
And us on an emergency call.
Professional critics have described Bone as a cross between Bugs Bunny and Lord of the Rings, and that's just fine with Smith.
What I wanted to do was take, like, very traditional Americana cartoon characters, like, a Donald Duck or a Bugs Bunny, and stick them into, like, a larger framework, instead of just the usual short, comic book adventure that we all think of. I'm actually part of a wave of cartoonists that really thought more could be done with comics, that the medium could actually handle, real literary structure.
Smith put out the first issue on his own in 1991. It was part of an underground comic scene, picking up readers by word of mouth, and soon it began to take off.
It was moving fast, and I was starting to screw it up, because I was not only drawing the comic, but at first I was actually, filling the orders and, doing the invoicing and everything, and I was actually putting boxes on a UPS truck, and I was falling behind. But I said, come on, honey, quit that Silicon Valley job, and let's go publish comics out of the garage.
Because if you look real close, it does look like...
Smith's wife, Vijaya, became his business partner, and the two left the West Coast and moved back to Columbus, where they had attended Ohio State. In 2004, the series complete, they published the entire tale in a 1,300-plus page volume. Then Scholastic, publisher of Harry Potter, began a re-release of the series in colorized versions in many languages, and sales have grown to almost 4 million and counting. It's all part of the wave of popularity of long-form comics marketed as graphic novels and increasingly taking over shelf space at bookstores.
This idea of being
Lucy Shelton Caswell has known Jeff Smith since he was drawing cartoons for The Lantern, Ohio State's student daily.
At the time they first started publishing Bone, people in the comics industry thought they were a little bit loony. And
they thought they were loony because of the way they were doing it?
Because of the way they were doing it. Nobody would want to buy black and white comics. Certainly the market for fantasy comics wasn't well developed at that point. Who wanted to read a story about funny-looking little doughy creatures named the Bone Cousins? So the fact that Jeff went on to write this epic and publish it the way he wanted it, not the way some big corporation wanted it, is truly, truly amazing. And this is worth celebrating.
Examples of Smith's student work are on display now at Ohio State's Cartoon Research Library, which Caswell heads. One of the nation's leading repositories of cartoon books and art, this is clearly a place that takes comics seriously.
Why not? It's a major art form. It's consumed by millions of people. It's a multi-million-dollar industry. It tells stories that are worth knowing, worth thinking about.
When I'm telling a story,
at the Wexner, Smith's work is side by side with original drawings by some of those who most influenced him. Artists who, to Smith, prove that this is indeed an art form. Carl Banks, who created Uncle Scrooge, E.C. Seeger's Popeye, George Harriman's Crazy Cat, Gary Trudeau's Doonesbury, and of course, Charles Schulz and Peanuts. Pogo by Walt Kelly holds a special place.
I first came across Pogo when I was like 9 years old, and A little girl on the playground brought me a copy of her dad's, like a collection, like a paperback collection of Pogo comic strips.
You remember this, you were 9 years old.
I remember it clearly. I remember the cover, I remember everything. And the drawings were just beautiful beyond belief. I mean, look at this, like, okay, look at in the woods behind this fox's head. I mean, the woods go on forever. It was Pogo that made me actually go to the library and approach the librarian and say, how is this done?
Wexner curator Dave Philippi says Smith added an individual flair for long-form storytelling and a drawing style influenced by training in animation.
He's just so skilled at depicting action, character movement, just the nuances in facial expressions and body movement, and giving the impression of just gesture and things like that. That all comes from animation.
These days, Jeff Smith is working on a new series called Rassel, a noirish tale of a time-traveling art thief. And while he's clearly happy for the success and the wonder of seeing his work on a museum's walls, the 9-year-old in him has not completely disappeared.
He does the original drawing large enough that...
Of course, I want my art form to have this kind of respectability. I've worked really hard. I'm one of the people that worked really hard to make it happen. But I hope they don't lose their punkness. I hope they don't.
The exhibition of Jeff Smith's work, Bone and Beyond, will be up through August 3rd.